Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this, depending on however you may look at your clock or wherever you may live, middle of the night or early morning bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. Ever since I was a child, I have been terrified of werewolves and wolves as well, especially movies about them. And, as a kid, I was crazy enough to watch them. But I covered my eyes whenever I knew the scary wolf was going to appear. So this obviously gave me terrible nightmares for most of my life. It was a Friday on Halloween night, my favorite holiday, 2016. At the time, I worked as an English teacher in a company I always thought did not appreciate me. On that night, I was planning to watch a horror movie marathon like I did every year. However, I was thinking about watching a werewolf movie that year. But one of my coworkers recommended an old movie called An American Werewolf in London. It sounded crazy, but I really wanted to face my fears and gave it a shot. On that day, I was very excited because I had already bought candy for the trick-or-treaters and some beer for myself, but I wished I really didn't have to work until 5 p.m. So as soon as I got off of work, I took my things and left my office. I drove my car home, which I called the Batmobile, to execute my plans. I listened to a song called Thriller, which I love listening to on Halloween nights. I got home at 7 p.m. or so, then I took a beer from the fridge, drank a long sip, and heard the door ring, which scared me for a moment, but then I heard trick or treat behind the door. So I opened it, complimented the kids on the cool costumes, and gave them candy. The trick-or-treating kept visiting till about 8 p.m., and all the while I listened to heavy metal and ate ramen for dinner. After that, I grabbed my laptop, which watched my horror movie marathon on, and I left the werewolf movie for last. I sometimes had to pause to get another beer, and it scared the crap out of me, but I still thought it was a great movie. So I was 6 beers in and decided to go to sleep at midnight. That night I had a terrible nightmare, where I had to run away from a werewolf in a dark, foggy, creepy forest, which was only lit by a full moon. In my dream, I was screaming my lungs out and felt extremely disoriented and afraid of the huge, bulky, black-as-night werewolf that was chasing after me. I ran for my life for what seemed like hours, but I felt the beast closing in. I turned around several times, and all I could see was its dark silhouette, bright red eyes, and yellow teeth baring at me. Then I screamed again and ran a bit faster. Out of the blue, I came across a huge fallen tree that blocked my way, so I had no choice but to jump over it. I heard the werewolf growling and panting behind me, so it too jumped the tree. While I was still in midair, I felt a sharp pain on my back and woke up suddenly. Then I jumped out of my bed from fright, hit my body against the floor, and cursed. Rubbing my eyes, I got up slowly. Out of nowhere, I felt a sudden and strong pain on my back, just like in my dream. I tried reaching for the place where I felt the pain, but I couldn't reach. So I went to the bathroom, washed my face, drank a bit of tap water, saw myself in the mirror, turned around, and to my horror I saw 5 deep, bloody gashes on my back. I jumped forward and said, "What the hell is that?" The next day I went to the hospital and got my wounds patched up. I simply lied to the doctor and said my cat had scratched me while I was sleeping. I obviously don't own a cat. To this day, I still ask myself if that was just a crazy dream, or did my terrified mind somehow make it reality? Who knows? The truth is, I never watched a werewolf movie again, since I was terrified that I would have another nightmare as vivid and terrifying as that one. Today's second part of the upload. I don't know where to begin with this, so I'll just start from the beginning of the night. My brother-in-law, one of my best friend, his name was Michael. He's 18. His brother is 20. His name's Steve. As well as my friend Derek, 15, and Daniel, 15, were with me. I'm 16 in case the ages are relevant. Anyway, there is a baseball field near my house. Again, in case it's relevant. I'll add the location. Back to the story. Mike and I were very close, and being young boys, we like to screw around with our friends. So we told them we should go to the baseball park that was haunted. It really wasn't haunted, but we wanted to scare them, ironically, so we told them that a woman had been killed on the largest of the 5 fields there. So we parked Steve's van in the parking lot of the field, by which there was a large stadium light, but it barely illuminates anything but a 50-foot radius on the ground. We got out of the van and began walking outside of the field by the first base. The home plate side is by the very end of the park, which is moated by a ditch. Mike screamed in order to scare the rest of us, so naturally we all ran back to the van. This happened several times until we decided to actually go into the field through a gate located at the right field fence line. We walked towards home plate, slowly repeating what we had done outside of the fence as far as screaming things. Now both Mike and I are somewhat ESP, if that's the correct term, as I've seen several otherworldly beings, which I assume were demons, as they were black figures. The third time we were walking to home plate, Derek, Michael, and I all linked arms, because as soon as we entered the field, the temperature dropped, what felt like 20 degrees. We walked slowly while Daniel and Steven led us by 10 feet. The field's pretty large, almost as big as a Major League Baseball field, so it was a bit of a walk. By the time we reached the clay and Steve and Daniel were near the pitcher's mound, an unnatural fear came over me and I began to beg them not to go any further. They both laughed at me, and Michael agreed with me, advising us all to walk back. They decided to keep walking, and as soon as they crossed the pitcher's mound, my entire head felt like it had been struck by a flashing headache. Something caught my eye by the left field, and I looked over. There was a creature. Its body was a very skinny dog, but the body was around 7 feet long. Its legs were as skinny as a large baseball bat, and around the same length as a baseball bat. The head of this beast looked like a hollowed-out tiger's skull. Even though it was pitch black, we, Michael and I, could see that it was a milky gray. It emitted no light whatsoever. As soon as I saw it, I felt a primal fear that I've never experienced before in my entire life, as if I was staring at death himself in its face. The creature was on the outside of the fence and was running up by the fence. Instead of pulling its front claws on the fence, it pulled its right back leg up over its body, with its spine bending disturbingly. It latched onto the top of the fence and lifted itself over. As soon as it hit the ground, it disappeared. No flashing. It was there, and it wasn't. This happened in, of course, a second. Of course, at this point, I turned to Michael and screamed, "Holy God, did you see that?" And he was already screaming, "What the F was that?" We looked back, and all of a sudden, 3 other creatures appeared in left field. Each almost a third of the size of the original beast. They appeared to be medium-sized dogs, all the same color as the beast, with glowing reddish-yellow eyes. Again, they emitted no light, and at this point, Michael and I both screamed for everyone to run for their lives, because we were both filled with the primal fear. Running away, I looked back, and the dogs had turned to watch all 5 of us leave, and they were slowly walking toward us. So I turned my attention back to running, back at the van. Michael and I began to describe what we saw to the 3 of them. They didn't believe us and thought we were just screwing around with them. Even though I was crying, I was still in shock. Stephen, Derek, and Daniel all went into the field, and Michael and I stayed in the van, reaffirming to each other what we had seen. We began to walk toward the field again, and I don't know if this is because I have ESP or something of that sort, but I began to see an extremely thick bluish gray fog surrounding everything. When we walked past the light, it flickered, and Michael and I both began to walk backwards toward the van. Still standing there, we were both looking around. I think I may have seen a black dog figure in the bush, but I'm not too sure. But I am sure of what I saw next. I looked towards the bleachers in a different field, and I saw a figure standing there. It was 7 feet tall, human-shaped, with what looked like folded wings. It had red eyes, and it was just standing and watching Michael and I. Being men, we decided that we were actually going to confront it, and I walked towards it, and it disappeared. This was the last encounter of the night. I don't know if that's relevant, but neither Michael or I believe in God. We believe that there is something out there, but it either doesn't care or is trying to destroy us. Also, it's rumored that black masses are held at that park. I'm not lying. Today's third part of the upload is from my neck of the woods. I've been interested in this cryptid stuff for a while now. I'm a hopeful skeptic, but I had something happen last night while out camping that I feel like I should be able to explain. Let me start over. A while ago, I broke my arm. Just a stupid accident. I sat on my ass and watched a lot of Netflix for 2 or 3 months. A few days ago, my very good friend T called me and asked if I was up for an overnight camping trip to my favorite spot, just inside the Adirondack State Park, west and south of the town of Wells, New York. Of course I was. We got everything ready, food, water, whatnot, and left my house at around 6 p.m. We just wanted to make a fire, have some dinner, shoot the shit, relax, and do some hiking the next day and go home. We got there maybe a couple of hours before dusk and set up our camp. T has not camped since he was a preteen, whereas I've been camping my entire life. We're both in our early 40s. The place is almost deserted. There was a family with a camper almost a mile away from us. This is actually a trailhead with campsites littered along an 8-mile dirt road. We did all of the intended stuff for the night. T slept in his car. I set up a hammock about 30 yards away, 5 or 6 feet from the fire pit. Around midnight, and a lot of people said no, I wasn't drunk or on drugs. We both had some alcohol. I like to drink, but not excessively while camping. I'm there to enjoy nature, not get fucked up. I can do that at home. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the noise of T's car door slamming. I peer over and his dome light is on, and he seems to be looking for something. The dome light goes off, but now I'm awake. I kept peering over, and for a few minutes later, the flashlight on his phone is on, and it looks like he's shining it out the windows, still looking. What's going on, I thought. Did he hear something? Needless to say, I didn't go back to sleep easily. I was fairly certain I could hear coyotes yipping and fighting in the distance. Around 4 a.m., I thought I heard a loud noise. We were camped right next to the river, and the noise sounded like a loud whoomp, like a giant clearing his throat, but from the other side of the river. It was so pitch black out there, I started to feel uneasy. I kept peeking over to T. The sun is set to rise in less than an hour, and I heard a scratching, digging noise. Peeking over again, I thought I saw a shadow move near T's car. I took out my phone and just opened the main screen instead of the flashlight. There were two distinct pairs of eye shine to the right of his car, yellowish white and low, maybe 1 to 2 feet off the ground. I was scared in a place I had loved since I was a teen, a place I had always felt safe in. Then the left pair started to move in kind of a circular motion. I was already pretty freaked out. I want to say I felt a presence, but all I felt was scared. Scared for my friend and scared for myself. I turned on the flashlight, forgetting that it's pointed at me, and momentarily blinded myself. I caught a vague glimpse of two smallish animal things vanishing, then still looking at T's car, still feeling that same dread. I hear from behind me, "Humph." It was soft, but so deep it rattled my chest, then nothing. I didn't turn around, I was too afraid. I may have gotten 2 hours of sleep that night. I had bad dreams the few hours I did sleep. In the morning, T and I had some food, and I asked him what he was doing around 3 or 4 in the morning. "Oh, I woke up and thought I lost my wallet." "So you didn't hear or see anything?" "Nope. I couldn't even hear the river. T has really bad tendinitis, so I let it go." We went on for 5, 6, 7-mile hike today. I got to show him some of my favorite places. We saw a lot of amazing scenery, talked a lot, and hiked by ourselves sore. On the way back to the car, maybe an hour left, I heard a knock, far away, but it sounded loud. Like I said, the only people we had seen was that family in the trailer. I was in front and I stopped. "Did you just hear that?" "Hear what?" "That was a knock." I didn't hear anything. The rest of the hike passed uneventful, save for both of us complaining about the mosquitoes. I told him about the eye shine I saw the next to his car, and we both rationalized it as maybe a pair of raccoons or something. I didn't see any point to tell him about the rest. I'm not sure what I believe myself. It happened after a glass of whiskey and a little sleep. But just as we were leaving, that tree knock, it makes me wonder. Today's fourth part of the upload, we are still going to stay in my neck of the woods. This happened in March of 2018. I had just moved from New York to Vermont and decided to rent a home for a couple of months that allowed my cat and dog while I waited to close on my new house in Vermont. That year it was practically snowy, and this house was located on a small mountain off a dirt road. If 10 cars passed on that road during a day, it was a busy day. I thought it was closer to the village when I booked it through Zillow, but I wasn't looking to go anywhere really, but to instead heal, rest up, and relax from what had been an already exhausting packing ordeal and moving experience. I had some guy friends who had helped me get up there, and they left after one night. I was told now not to let my dog run without a leash, as there were a few alpacas at the next door farm who may attack my dog, which was at least 1/8 of a mile walking distance away. Not that my aging dog was going anywhere fast. He was 16 to 17 at the time and could barely walk anymore. He was one of those awesome, really great dogs you may be lucky to have once or twice in your life. Get along with anything or anyone. The next neighbor after that was at least a mile down the road. As I settled into this lovely one-story house, the house was automated motion detectors that would light up the driveway that ran behind the house. There stood a huge ancient apple tree that still had a few apples on it way up high, even in March, and your usual pine and birch trees surrounding the property. The large front and back lawn areas, being several acres inside, are surrounded by forests and an old rock wall. I grew up in the area in New York where I was surrounded by trees and forests, so I wasn't spooked until the second night. The house had a large pond out in front, which was covered with ice and snow. There was literally at least 4 feet of snow on the ground, with just enough of the driveway plowed to get your car in and out. I backed my car by the back door. There were several outbuildings, too, on the property. One building in particular was perhaps 30 feet from the back door of the house that you could go through to the kitchen to get to. In this open garage-like building, it looked like it was used as a large garden storage area. There was no door, just an open area. Off the kitchen was a screened-in porch that faced the pond out front. This is important for the story later. So on that second night, I took my dog, put him on his leash. It was around 8 p.m. and pitch black outside. Fresh, fluffy snow was about 1 foot had fallen, and being a silly New Yorker, just put my sneakers on without socks. I'm in my nightgown and a light jacket. I walked out back with my dog in tow, thinking I'd only be outside for a couple of minutes. I walked him slowly to do his business, as soon readying to get to bed. As I returned to the door, I soon realized that I had inadvertently locked myself out of the house. Fuck, it was those types of doorknobs that if you twisted it in one direction, it will lock itself. I tried not to panic, but it's cold, and there I was looking silly, and thought perhaps I could walk to the neighbor's house, but I didn't have a flashlight, no cell phone, and felt I'd break an ankle trying to manage that walk in the dark. That's when I remembered I saw something in that open garage-like building. A crowbar, I thought. Well, I could do one of those MacGyver moves. I've seen enough window break-ins on TV. And went and took my dog's leash, tied it around my car's left mirror. I knew I would not only be losing my deposit at this point, but I'd have to pay for the damage. But heck, I'm stuck outside with no key in freezing temperatures without any way of even getting into my car to stay the night with my dog. I grab the crowbar, and with a little hesitancy, and then with full vigor, I took said crowbar facing away, swung it at the glass window as hard as I could. It bounced off the glass, making the loudest sound that just echoed in the night air. It even sparked. I was like, what the fuck was that? Now, first of all, what kind of window doesn't break? Mind you, I'm a strong gal. But this was like bulletproof glass or safety glass. Then I thought, well, since perhaps it's a safety feature, so let me try another window. I chose one just to the left, after surveying that I could probably get to climb in, and again, same issue. I was like, okay, forget this. There's got to be a better solution. That's when I remembered the screened-in porch that's off the kitchen, and I thought, well, perhaps if I get onto the screen porch door that leads outside, and if the door to the kitchen is still unlocked, then I would only have to pay for the ripped screen, much cheaper to repair than a broken window. I go look around, and there's at least a 15-foot long path in the snow that must be cleared for me to even access the screen door. I went to the garage and grabbed a shovel I saw earlier. My hands and legs are getting colder by every moment. I start to clear the snow, shoveling as fast as I can. All the time my dog is barking because he can't see me around the corner. His barks echo off the back mountain that's beyond the forest in the backyard. I kept yelling at him to quiet down. When I no longer hear him, I don't think too much about it because I have got to get inside and figure he just calmed down a bit. Finally, I reach the screen door, and I'm super grateful it's unlocked. I squeeze my way through, pushing more snow out of the way to make way for my access and to get through the kitchen door, hoping all the while I haven't locked this door to the house, and wow, it's unlocked. I'm so relieved. I run through the kitchen, go back out the door from which I'd got locked out to get my dog, not without grabbing the keys this time. I look at the mirror of the car, and my dog's not there. His leash just hangs there, and it looks like it had been torn. I start to freak out, like I need more trouble tonight. I start to walk around to the back of the house, and there's my old dog, happily having done his business, just waiting his way back to me. I'm one relieved chick. The leash I tie into the snow so I can reuse it the next day. It's one of those retractable leashes made for dogs that are over 100 pounds, and it's at least an inch wide. How he tore it or chewed through it that quickly, I often wonder, so I finally get to bed and vow never to leave that house ever without my keys in hand. The next night is when Bigfoot decides to tell me they are in my neighborhood. I go out again around 8 p.m., and it's a clear night sky, and I'm staring up at the stars in disbelief at how pretty it is. I'm seeing constellations I haven't seen in years in living in New York. I'm standing at the back of the house, in front of the large picture window that looks out toward the backyard and mountain, with that open garage at 3 o'clock position to my right. I wasn't there for about 1 to 2 minutes when I heard the first knock at the 2 o'clock position and another one coming from my 11 o'clock position from where I'm standing. They were single, very clear one-knock noises, very much just like the ones I had made the night before while trying to get back into the house by trying to break back into the house through the windows, loud and clear. When I hear those noises, they were very distinctive. I know the sounds trees make when they sway. This wasn't trees swaying. In fact, there was no wind that night. You know, I hightailed it back inside that house in seconds flat, and I locked all the doors. Next night, I'm thinking I'm okay, but what would happen next scared me to bits. I'm doing the usual routine of walking the dog just down the driveway some. I learned by now where the lights are for outside, so I make sure they're all on. It's icy out, and I'm using a ski pole to help me walk safely with a flashlight. And, of course, the house keys are in my jacket pocket while I walk the dog for his last evening walk. As I start to return to the back kitchen door, I look beyond the open garage building because a pop of color caught my eye. That's when I saw a pair of really large red eyes looking back at me at the edge of where the yard ends with the rock wall abutting the forest. At first, okay, perhaps an owl. As I continue to look, I move and shift my body left to right, thinking perhaps it's something of a reflector that's catching the lights from the house. I would be good with that explanation, but no. It was eyes, big red orangish eyes staring straight and watching me. What got me the most was how wide apart they were. This was about 120 feet from where I was standing. Those eyes looked like they were at least 10 inches apart. I didn't even want to imagine how big whatever I was looking at could be. I stood there for at least a minute because I was waiting for it to move, until I couldn't comprehend what I was looking at, so I scurried back into the house. The next day I went out and looked again at the area from which I saw the eyes looking back at me. Looked carefully, even venturing out, its daylight, into the deep snow for roughly 30 feet to see if perhaps it was something like reflectors or tin cans or anything like that that could reflect light back at me. I saw nothing, absolutely nothing. I grabbed the binoculars that were inside and went back out, and there was nothing except for the rock wall, the forest, the sounds of birds chirping happily. As I stayed there for 3 to 4 weeks, I never saw those eyes or whatever was reflecting again. This isn't my first experience with possible cryptids, as I've had 2 others, but those happened in New York. One day I'll share those, but yes, people, there is something odd out in those mountains in Chester, Vermont. And it wasn't a mountain lion, it wasn't a wolf or a coyote, but to hear that knocking, and then those big red glowing eyes the next night. I kept my night walking the dog very short after that, and never left the house after dark for any other reasons. I can assure you I felt like I was being watched several times after those first few nights. I didn't fear anything, but it was more like they were curious and watching out, quite literally. And the kicker, there was a key hanging right above the shovel that I grabbed that first night that would have gained access back into the house immediately. And yes, I got my entire security deposit back. I adored that house, by the way, and haven't shared this story very much, but my MacGyver days are over, that's for sure. Hope you enjoyed this true experience from March of 2018. Well, there you have it, folks, this night-ending bonus. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly, what gives people a chance and a place for them to share their encounters and theories judgment-free. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.